Hello, and welcome to this audiobook summary of The New Psychology of Winning by Denis Waitley. I'm your narrator, and over the next hour, we're going to embark on a deep dive into a book that's both a classic reborn and a fresh guide for today's world. Published in 2021, this work builds on Waitley's legendary 1978 audio program, blending timeless wisdom with cutting-edge science to help us win, not just at games or careers, but at life itself. From his childhood in wartime San Diego to his work with Olympians and astronauts, Denis offers a roadmap to self-mastery. So, grab a comfy seat, and let's explore what it means to be a 21st century winner. Introduction, the foreword, a legacy reborn. Picture this, it's 1976. Apple is just a fledgling startup. NASA unveils its first space shuttle, and a little-known author named Denis Waitley steps into a local church to record an audio tape. That tape would become The Psychology of Winning, a groundbreaking audio program that sold over 2 million copies and generated $100 million in sales. It wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon, laying the foundation for the personal development industry we know today. Fast forward to 2021, and Denis Waitley, now a seasoned expert with decades of wisdom, brings us The New Psychology of Winning. The foreword sets the stage, telling us why this update matters. The foreword paints a vivid picture of 1976, a year of innovation and optimism. Denis, then a relatively unknown voice, distilled years of research into 10 qualities of a total winner. These weren't fluffy motivational slogans. They were practical, science-backed traits he'd observed in Olympic athletes and high achievers. The original program resonated because it combined credibility with accessibility. Denis wasn't preaching from a pedestal. He was sharing what he'd learned from the best for the rest of us. But why a new version? The world has changed since the 1970s. We've shifted from the industrial age to the digital age, where smartphones dictate our attention and neuroscience reveals new truths about the brain. The foreword asks, how do these changes affect Denis's original message? How has technology reshaped our pursuit of success? And what about happiness, relationships, and meaning in a world that feels more connected yet more fragmented than ever? Denis promises to answer these questions with fresh insights, blending timeless principles with modern science, all delivered in his authentic, conversational style with a dash of humor. Take, for example, his work with the U.S. Olympic Committee in the 1980s. As chairman of psychology, Denis helped athletes enhance their performance, not just physically, but mentally. That experience, along with his time counseling Vietnam POWs and Apollo astronauts, informs this book. The foreword teases a journey through Denis's life, from his Naval Academy days to his mentorship under Jonas Salk, the polio vaccine pioneer. It's a story of resilience, curiosity, and a relentless drive to help others win. And that's where we're headed next, into Chapter 1, where Denis reveals the roots of his winning philosophy. Chapter 1. A New Paradigm of Winning, The Seeds of Greatness. Chapter 1, titled A New Paradigm of Winning, feels like sitting down with Denis over coffee as he shares his life story. And trust me, it's a story worth hearing. Born in the early 1930s in San Diego, Denis grew up in a modest $11,000 home during the Great Depression and World War II. His childhood was simple, sandwiches without chicken, pork and beans, and a library card more precious than gold. But beneath the simplicity, profound lessons were taking root, lessons that would shape his view of winning. Denis starts with a memory that hit him like a lightning bolt during the editing of this book. It's 1942, and he's 9 years old. His father, about to leave for the war, tucks him into bed and says something cryptic. When I blow out your light, it'll be dark all over the world, because the only world you'll ever know is the one you see through your own eyes. The next night, his father adds, the marvelous place between your ears, your brain, is your universe. How you choose to view life will always be the way life will be to you. Then, with a kiss and a whispered goodbye, his father is gone, off to serve on an oil tanker in the South Pacific. For years, Denis thought his father had abandoned them, as his mother claimed. But later, he learned the truth. His father hadn't run away. He'd chosen duty over despair. That moment, buried in Denis's memory, became the cornerstone of his philosophy. Life is perceived through the eye of the beholder. It's not what happens to you. It's how you take it and what you make of it. It's a simple yet radical idea that we control our reality through our perception. Denis weaves this insight through his early years. His parents' arguments left him crying under a pillow, but his grandmother, Mabel, offered a lifeline. She'd greet him with, "Here comes Mr. Potential," and together they'd tend a victory garden. While his mother's negativity chipped away at his self-esteem, handing him guilt rocks as he headed to baseball practice, his grandmother planted seeds of encouragement. Teachers like Mr. Seeley, who gave him, as a man thinketh, and Mr. Clark, who praised his poetic gift, watered those seeds. By age 12, Denis wrote a poem about the unknown soldier, hinting at the introspective writer he'd become. His path wasn't linear. The Korean War led him to the U.S. Naval Academy, where he excelled in English and speaking but struggled with engineering. As a pilot, he learned discipline through simulations, though he admits he was more poet than engineer. Later, working with Jonas Salk introduced him to giants like Viktor Frankl and Abraham Maslow, who reinforced his belief in human potential. His doctoral research on Korean War POWs revealed a key insight. In minimum security camps, prisoners didn't escape because they lacked purpose. In maximum security camps, leaders with goals fought to survive. Purpose, Denis realized, is the spark of winning. So what's the new paradigm? Denis argues that winning isn't about defeating others. It's about realizing your potential while helping others do the same. The old view, standing over a fallen adversary, has evolved. Today's winner collaborates, not conquers. He cites the ancient Greeks, whose Olympic Games tested excellence, not rivalry. But the delivery has changed. Attention spans are shorter, technology dominates, and role models shape us more than ever. Neuroscience, too, has shifted his thinking. Once, he believed talents were fixed. Now, he knows the brain's plasticity lets us learn anything, like playing the piano later in life. Take Jack Nicklaus, the golf legend Denis mentions later in the book. Nicklaus visualized every shot incrementally: club selection, practice swings, reading the green. That's winning, small steps toward a clear goal. Denis contrasts this with today's moist robots, tethered to smartphones, losing intimacy for instant connection. He urges us to step back, reclaim self-awareness, and use our brain's goal positioning system to navigate life's chaos. It's a call to focus on what matters, not just what's trending. Chapter 2. The Psychology of Winning Revisited, the 10 Qualities Unpacked. Now, let's step into Chapter 2, The Psychology of Winning Revisited, where Denis revisits the 10 qualities that made his original work a classic. This isn't a dusty recap. It's a vibrant update, blending 1970s wisdom with 21st century science. He lists them up front: positive self-expectancy, self-motivation, self-image, self-direction, self-control, self-discipline, self-esteem, self-dimension, self-awareness, and self-projection. Let's unpack a few with examples to see how they shine anew. First, positive self-expectancy. Denis calls it the biology of hope. Your brain's pharmacy releases chemicals based on what you expect. You may not get what you want, he says, but you'll get what you expect. Optimism isn't inborn, it's learned. Think of the cyclist in Breaking Away, defying his stonecutter father's limits. Denis once thought his own future was set, until teachers and mentors showed him he could expect more. Today, he says, we can train our brains to expect success, not failure, despite a world obsessed with bad news. Next, positive self-motivation. Motivation is motive in action, driven by desire, not fear. Fear pushes us backward. Desire propels us forward. Denis recalls his mother's guilt trips, "Have fun while I slave away," versus his grandmother's, "You're doing great." The latter ignited his drive. He cites studies showing internal motivation outlasts pep talks or bonuses. Imagine a student aiming for an A because she loves learning, not just to avoid a scolding. That's the winner's way. Then, positive self-image. In a screen-saturated age, kids see thousands of images daily, stifling imagination. Denis stresses that imagination rules the world. Your brain can't tell a vivid virtual image from reality if it's emotionally charged. He worked with Olympians who visualized winning, feeling the medal's weight before it was real. Today, he warns, we must guard our self-image from digital distortions and craft it intentionally. Positive self-direction follows. Denis quotes Viktor Frankl, "Life isn't accountable to us for meaning. We're accountable to life to give it meaning through goals." In Auschwitz, Frankl gave prisoners purpose, imagining justice or reunion, keeping them alive. Denis contrasts this with aimless drifting. A modern example? A tech worker might set a specific goal, learn coding in 6 months, versus vaguely getting ahead. The list continues, but let's pause on positive self-esteem. Denis insists it's innate, not earned. You're a diamond, needing only to be polished. His mother's negativity made him doubt this. His grandmother's praise restored it. Neuroscience backs him up. We can rewire our brains to believe in our worth, overriding old tapes of not enough. Denis ties these qualities to today's world. Short attention spans and tech overload challenge self-control and discipline, but brain plasticity offers hope. We can replace old habits, like doom scrolling, with new ones, like meditating, through repetition. He's gentler now, less about gold medals, more about enrichment. Winning, he says, is living your why, a lesson from a lifetime of highs and lows. As we wrap up this hour, we've journeyed from Denis Waitley's humble beginnings to the 10 qualities that define a winner, then and now. The foreword introduced a legend reborn. Chapter 1 revealed a paradigm shift rooted in perception and purpose, and Chapter 2 refreshed timeless traits with modern relevance. Whether it's expecting success, igniting desire, or imagining your best self, Denis offers a roadmap, not to trample others, but to lift yourself and those around you. Think of Nicholas on the green or Frankl in the camps. Winners see the next step and take it. Denis challenges us to do the same, using our brain's incredible adaptability to craft a life of meaning. So, as you turn off this audiobook, ask yourself, what's my why? How will I see the world through my own eyes today? Thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep winning your way. Chapter 3, Winning in the 21st Century, Navigating the New Normal. Imagine stepping into Denis Waitley's shoes as he surveys the world of 2021, a landscape unrecognizable from the 1970s when he first shared The Psychology of Winning. Chapter 3, titled Winning in the 21st Century, is his attempt to bridge that gap, to show us how the qualities of a winner adapt to a digital, fast-paced, often anxious age. Denis starts with a reflection. Back in the 1950s, when he was coming of age, optimism fueled the American psyche. Think jet-age dreams and moon landings. But today, dystopian movies outpace utopian ones, and our smartphones buzz with wildfires, wars, and woes in real time. It's a shift that's left many of us feeling overwhelmed, and Denis wants to help us find our footing. He begins by pinpointing what's changed. Attention spans? Shorter than ever. Think 30-second TikToks over hour-long lectures. Gratification? We want it now, not later. Information? It's a fire hose, not a trickle, with every library in the world at our fingertips. Denis doesn't lament this. He marvels at it. Technology lets us connect across continents. Imagine seeing your grandkids giggle on Skype from thousands of miles away. But there's a catch. That same tech tethers us to screens, turning us into what he calls moist robots, more plugged into virtual likes than real hugs. Intimacy, he warns, is the casualty. Those subtle cues of body language and tone get lost in texts and tweets. Denis ties this to a bigger trend, our collective anxiety. In the 50s, news came slow, a week-old paper or a radio broadcast. Now, satellites beam disasters to our palms instantly. He quotes his friend Paul Harvey. Bad news sells because the fire that burns another's home warms the general population. Human nature, Denis muses, loves a crash to rubberneck. Think Daytona 500 pileups. But this constant drip of negativity skews our lens, making the future feel bleak. Winning today, he argues, means cutting through that noise with resilience and focus. Neuroscience offers a lifeline here, and Denis lights up when he talks about it. Back in the 70s, he thought habits took 21 days to form, a motivational myth he now debunks. Modern science says it's more like 3 to 6 months, sometimes years, because our brains are plastic, not rigid. We can rewire them, swapping old paths, like doom scrolling, for new ones, like meditating or learning a skill. Denis sees this as empowerment. No matter the chaos, pandemics, market dips, or personal setbacks, we can adapt. Winning isn't about avoiding the storm. It's about sailing through it. He contrasts two eras of winning. The old model was competitive, gold or bust. Nike's, you don't win silver, you lose gold. Today, Denis favors collaboration and enrichment. The 21st century winner doesn't just climb the ladder. They help others up too. Technology aids this. Think crowdfunding a dream or mentoring via Zoom, but only if we balance it with human connection. Denis's challenge? Use the tools of now, apps, data, networks, to pursue a timeless why, not just a fleeting what. Example of application. Picture Sarah, a 30-something marketing manager burned out by 2020's upheaval. She's glued to her phone, refreshing news feeds, feeling stuck. Inspired by Chapter 3, she sets a specific goal: learn graphic design in 6 months to pivot her career. She ditches mindless scrolling for online courses, schedules coffee chats with mentors, virtual or in person, and tracks her progress weekly. By focusing on a clear why, creative freedom, she turns chaos into opportunity, embodying Denis's resilient winner. Chapter 4. The Inner Winner, the bedrock of self-esteem. Now let's step into Chapter 4, The Inner Winner, where Denis gets personal, really personal. This is the heart of his philosophy, the quiet strength that powers all the other qualities, self-esteem. He opens with a confession. He didn't write The Psychology of Winning as a victor atop a pedestal. I wrote it for myself, he says, because I was losing. Mistakes as a son, husband, father, grandfather. He's made them all, and that vulnerability hooks you. Winning, he insists, starts inside, with a belief in your worth that no one can give or take away. Denis takes us back to his San Diego childhood, a roller coaster of emotions. His parents' arguments sent him under the pillow, crying, while his mother's bitterness after his father left piled guilt on his young shoulders. "Gee, it must be nice to play baseball while I slave over dinner," she'd say, handing him metaphorical rocks to carry. Contrast that with his grandmother, Mabel, who'd beam, "Here comes Mr. Potential," as they planted their victory garden. That split shaped him. One voice chipped at his self-esteem, another rebuilt it. He learned early that external praise or blame can sway you, but true worth is innate. He ties this to his POW research. In Korean War camps, prisoners with a sense of inner value, leaders with families or faith, survived brutal conditions. Those without it withered, even in cushier setups. Self-esteem, Denis realized, isn't earned through wins. It's a birthright, like a diamond needing polish, not creation. This flies against today's culture, where social media screams, "Prove you're enough." Likes, followers, hustle. Denis counters, "You're enough already." The trick is believing it. Neuroscience backs him up again. Our brains store every jab. You're not good enough. But they can rewire. Denis recalls his mother's negativity lingering into his teens, yet his grandmother's encouragement stuck deeper. He learned to see failures as fertilizer, not fatal flaws. Failures are the compost of success, he writes, a messy but vital truth. The inner winner doesn't dodge setbacks. They use them to grow. Denis gets practical here. Build self-esteem by owning your potential, not your past. Role models matter. His grandmother, teachers like Mr. Seeley, but so does self-talk. Swap, "I can't," for "I'm learning." In a world of comparison, this inner anchor keeps you steady. He's gentler now than in the 70s. Less about trophies, more about peace. Winning, he says, is living as your authentic self, flaws and all. Example of application, meet James, a college student crushed by a failed exam. He's scrolling Instagram, envying peers' highlight reels, feeling worthless. Chapter 4 inspires him to shift gears. He writes, "I'm a diamond in progress," and tapes it to his mirror, a daily reminder of his innate worth. Instead of wallowing, he studies his mistakes, meets a tutor, and aces the next test. That failure? Fertilizer for his growth. James learns to measure himself against his potential, not others' posts, building an inner winner's resilience. Tying it together, applying chapters 3 and 4 in today's world. So, how do chapters 3 and 4 weave together? Chapter 3 gives us the external game plan, winning in a tech-driven, noisy world by focusing on purpose and adaptability. Chapter 4 hands us the internal compass, self-esteem as the rock that steadies us through storms. Denis's genius is linking them. You can't navigate the 21st century's chaos without believing you're worth the journey. Neuroscience ties the knot. Our plastic brains can rewire both our habits and our self-view, making winning a choice, not a gift. Let's expand those examples. Sarah, our marketing manager, pairs her Chapter 3 goal, learning design, with Chapter 4's self-esteem boost. She tells herself, "I'm capable, even when I stumble," silencing doubts as she masters new software. Her why, creative freedom, grounds her, and her belief in her worth fuels the 6-month slog. By month 4, she's designing logos, not just dreaming of them, a winner in a volatile job market. James, our student, blends the chapters too. His Chapter 4 self-talk, "I'm a diamond," meets Chapter 3's call to rewire habits. He swaps late-night gaming for study sessions, using tech, an app to track progress, without letting it rule him. His focus sharpens, his grades climb, and he feels that inner winner emerge, not because he's perfect, but because he's growing. Denis would smile at both. They're not chasing gold medals. They're enriching their lives, step by step. Denis's voice shines here, part storyteller, part coach. He's not promising overnight miracles. He's offering tools tested by Olympians and refined by science. In a world of instant everything, he reminds us, winning takes time. 3 months, 6, a year, but it's worth it. Sarah and James prove it. Purpose plus self-belief equals progress, even when the news screams despair. Chapter 5, A Winner by Choice, Taking Responsibility for Outcomes in an Unpredictable World. Chapter 5, titled A Winner by Choice, Taking Responsibility for Outcomes in an Unpredictable World, is where Denis Waitley plants his flag. You're the captain of your ship, no matter how wild the seas. He kicks off with a memory from his days as a Navy pilot, flying high-performance jets off carriers. If you do it right in drill, he learned, you'll do it right in life. Simulations weren't just practice. They were permanent habits etched into his reflexes. One wrong move, and you're not landing on that tiny deck. That lesson stuck. Responsibility isn't optional, it's survival. Denis reflects on his life's roller coaster, mistakes as a son, husband, father, and admits he didn't always own them. His mother's guilt trips, "Have fun while I slave," taught him to dodge blame, but his grandmother's "Mr. Potential" nudged him toward accountability. He ties this to his work with Olympians in the 1980s. Gold medalists weren't just gifted, they chose discipline over excuses. Take Wilma Rudolph, a triple Olympic champion he knew personally. She overcame polio and poverty because she owned her path, not her limits. Today's world, Denis says, is a storm of unpredictability, pandemics, job shifts, climate chaos. It's tempting to point fingers. The economy's bad. My boss hates me. But winners don't. They ask, what can I control? Denis leans on neuroscience here. Our brains thrive on agency. When we take responsibility, we activate our goal positioning system, steering toward outcomes we shape. Blame, he warns, is a dead-end street. It's handing your power to someone else. He gets practical. Responsibility means 3 things: owning your choices, learning from setbacks, and acting despite uncertainty. Denis recalls counseling Vietnam POWs. Those who survived didn't curse their captors. They focused on what they could do, like mentally plotting escape or clinging to hope. In the 21st century, this translates to resilience. You can't control a layoff, but you can control your next move, upskilling, networking, adapting. Denis flips the old winning script. It's not about never failing. It's about choosing how you respond. Failures are fertilizer, he repeats from earlier chapters, but here he adds, you decide whether to plant seeds in that compost or let it rot. The unpredictability of now, AI, gig economies, global unrest, is your training ground. Winners choose to play, not sit it out. Example, think of an Olympian like Michael Phelps. Denis might nod here. Phelps didn't win 23 golds by blaming choppy pools. He owned his training, tweaking every stroke. That's the choice in action. Chapter 6, A Winner's Desire, Motivating Change by Reward, Not Fear. Chapter 6, A Winner's Desire, Motivating Change by Reward, Not Fear, feels like Denis handing you a torch to light your way. He starts with a simple truth. Motivation is everything. It's the fuel for action. But not all fuel burns the same. Fear might spark a sprint, but desire powers a marathon. Denis digs into his past again. His mother's negativity, "Don't mess up, or else," pushed him, sure, but it was fleeting, like a pep talk that fades by Monday. His grandmother's praise, "Look what's coming up in our garden," pulled him forward, igniting a hunger to grow. He contrasts these drivers. Fear is compulsion, a rearview mirror fixated on penalties. Don't fail, don't fall. Desire is propulsion, a windshield view of rewards. Create, achieve, enjoy. Denis cites his Olympic days. Athletes didn't train to avoid losing. They chased the thrill of the podium, the roar of the crowd. Fear keeps you alive in a crisis. Dodge the lion. But desire builds a life worth living. Fear is inhibition, he writes. Desire is ignition. Neuroscience lights up this idea. Our brains release dopamine, a feel-good chemical, when we chase rewards, not when we flee threats. Denis recalls Jonas Salk, his mentor, who said motivation from within beats any external carrot or stick. Money or applause. Nice, but temporary. A personal why. Say, inspiring your kids, sticks. Denis shares a story. Counseling Apollo astronauts, he saw them driven not by fear of failure, but by the dream of touching the stars. That's desire in orbit. Today, Denis sees fear everywhere. News feeds shouting pandemic. Crash. Doom. It paralyzes. Winners flip the script. What's the reward? He gets practical again. Set goals tied to joy, learning a skill for fun, not just a paycheck. Visualize the payoff vividly. Feel it, taste it. Repeat it daily. Fear fades when desire takes the wheel. In our instant gratification age, this takes patience, but Denis promises, reward-driven change lasts. He tweaks his 70s view. Winning isn't about beating others. It's about bettering yourself for a purpose. Desire, not dread, rewires your brain's highways, making success a habit. Motivation is motive in action, he says, and the best motive is what you want, not what you're running from. Example, Denis might point to Nadia Comaneci, the gymnast who scored a perfect 10 in 1976. She didn't dread the beam. She craved the beauty of nailing it, a desire that fueled relentless practice. Applying chapters 5 and 6, real-world examples. Now, let's tie chapters 5 and 6 together with examples you can grab and run with. Chapter 5 says, own it. Take responsibility, even when life's a mess. Chapter 6 adds, want it. Let desire, not fear, drive you. Denis's life stitches them tight. He chose to rise above his mother's bitterness, fueled by a desire to plant seeds of greatness, not just dodge guilt. Neuroscience seals the deal. Our brains adapt when we act with purpose and passion. Meet Lisa, a 40-year-old single mom facing a job loss in 2021. Chapter 5 hits her first. She could blame the pandemic. It's not my fault, but Denis's pilot voice echoes. On the landing. Lisa chooses responsibility. She can't control the layoff, but she can control her response. She signs up for an online coding bootcamp, a skill in demand. It's messy, late nights, toddler tantrums, but she sees failures as fertilizer. A buggy program? A lesson, not a defeat. Chapter 6 kicks in next. Fear could rule. What if I fail again? But Lisa taps desire. Her why isn't just a paycheck. It's showing her son what resilience looks like, building a life they love. She visualizes the reward, a remote coding gig, more time with him, a trip to the beach. She sticks a picture of them laughing by her laptop, dopamine in action. 6 months later, she lands a contract, not because she feared poverty, but because she craved growth. Denis would cheer. She chose, she wanted, she won. Now, picture Alex, a 25-year-old freelancer drowning in gig uncertainty. Chapter 5 wakes him up. He's been coasting. The market's tough, but Denis's POWs flash in his mind. Survive by owning what you can. Alex takes stock. He can't fix the economy, but he can pitch clients. He commits to 5 proposals a week, treating rejections as compost. Each no teaches him something. Chapter 6 fuels the fire. Fear whispers, you'll flop, but Alex picks desire, building a portfolio he's proud of, not just scraping by. He imagines the rush of landing a big project, the freedom to travel. He swaps late-night gaming for sketching pitches, driven by that vision. 3 months in, a client bites, a logo design gig that doubles his rate. Responsibility met reward, and Alex's brain rewires. Winning's a habit now. Lisa and Alex blend Dennis's lessons. Responsibility isn't sexy, it's hard choices in chaos. Desire isn't fluffy, it's a vivid pull stronger than fear's push. In our unpredictable world, they proved Dennis right. You don't wait for calm seas. You steer through the storm, eyes on the horizon. As we wrap this hour, chapters 5 and 6 leave us with a charge. Choose your path, ignite your drive. Denis Waitley, from Navy jets to Olympic tracks, shows us winning isn't luck, it's owning your outcomes and chasing what lights you up. Lisa and Alex did it. Turned chaos into compost, fear into fuel. Dennis asks, what's your unpredictable wave? What reward pulls you? Take a breath. Pick one thing to own, one desire to chase, and start today. Thanks for joining me. Keep choosing, keep wanting, keep winning. Chapter 7. A Winner's Edge, Leveraging Stress as a Positive Force. Chapter 7. A Winner's Edge, Leveraging Stress as a Positive Force, is Denis Waitley flipping the script on something we all dread, stress. He starts with a memory from his Navy pilot days, landing a jet on a pitching carrier deck at night, heart pounding, palms sweaty. Stress was my co-pilot, he says, and I had to make it work for me. That moment wasn't just about survival, it was about performance. Stress, Dennis argues, isn't the enemy. It's the edge that sharpens a winner if you know how to wield it. He takes us back to his work with Olympians in the 1980s. Picture a sprinter at the starting block, muscles tense, crowd roaring. That stress? It's not paralyzing, it's fuel. Dennis calls it eustress, the good kind, the kind that primes you for action. He contrasts it with distress, the chronic grind that wears you down. Think endless deadlines or toxic worry. The difference? Perception and control. Winners don't fight stress, they channel it. His research with Apollo astronauts backs this up. Spaceflight was a pressure cooker, but they thrived by focusing on what they could master, their training, their mindset. Dennis ties this to today's world. The 21st century piles on stress, notifications pinging, news blaring, to-do lists growing. Neuroscience offers a clue. Stress triggers adrenaline and cortisol, revving us up. Too much cortisol fries us, but just enough? It's rocket fuel. Dennis learned this young. His mother's arguments stressed him out, but his grandmother's garden calmed him down. The lesson? Stress is neutral. How you frame it shapes it. He gets practical. First, reframe stress as a challenge, not a threat. See that tight deadline as a chance to shine. Second, control what you can, breathe deep, plan smart, move your body. Third, let go of what you can't. Obsessing over a storm won't stop it. Dennis recalls counseling Vietnam POWs. They survived unimaginable stress by focusing on tiny wins, counting steps, imagining home. Today, he says, we can do the same. Turn pressure into progress. This isn't the 70s, no pain, no gain vibe. Dennis softens his edge now. Winning isn't about enduring misery. It's about using stress to grow without breaking. Pressure makes diamonds, he quips, but only if you don't crack first. The winner's edge is staying sharp, not shattered. Example. Think of a figure skater like Scott Hamilton, who Dennis worked with. A triple axel stress didn't crush him. It lifted him because he saw it as a thrill to conquer. Chapter 8. A Winner's Teamwork, Building Winning Relationships. Chapter 8. A Winner's Teamwork, Building Winning Relationships, is Dennis at his most heartfelt. He starts with a confession. No one wins alone. It's a shift from the lone wolf winner of old, a pilot, an Olympian, to a 21st century truth. Relationships are the backbone of success. He takes us to his childhood. His grandmother Mabel, with her Mr. Potential, hugs, was his first teammate. His mother? A tougher lesson. Her negativity taught him what not to build. Dennis learned early. Who you surround yourself with shapes who you become. He reflects on his Naval Academy days. Teamwork wasn't optional. It was life or death. A carrier landing needed pilots, deck crews, controllers, all in sync. Later, with Olympians, he saw relay teams win not just on speed, but on trust. The baton pass? A split-second dance of faith. Dennis ties this to his mentor, Jonas Salk, who beat polio not solo, but with a squad of scientists. One brain is brilliant, Denis writes, but many brains are unstoppable. Today, relationships face new tests. Technology connects us. Zoom calls span oceans, but dilutes depth. Denis mourns the loss of eye contact, the warmth of a handshake. Yet he's optimistic. We can build winning teams if we prioritize quality over quantity. He cites studies. Strong social bonds boost health, happiness, even lifespan. Winners don't just network, they nurture. Denis lays out a playbook. First, choose your team wisely. Seek givers, not takers. His grandmother gave encouragement. His teachers gave wisdom. Second, communicate with empathy. Listen more than you speak. Third, collaborate. Don't compete. Lift others as you rise. He contrasts this with today's me-first culture. Think influencers chasing clout. True winners, he says, share the podium. He updates his 70s view. Winning isn't a solo gold medal anymore. It's a relay where everyone crosses the line. In a fragmented world, relationships are the glue. Family, friends, colleagues. Denis's own life proves it. From POWs leaning on each other to astronauts trusting mission control, teamwork turns potential into power. Example, imagine the 1980 U.S. hockey team, Miracle on Ice. Denis might nod. They beat the Soviets not as stars, but as a unit, passing trust with every puck. Applying chapters 7 and 8, real-world examples. Let's weave chapters 7 and 8 together with examples that bring Denis's wisdom off the page. Chapter 7 says stress is your edge, leverage it. Chapter 8 says relationships are your strength, build them. Denis's life ties them tight. Navy stress honed his focus, but his grandmother's teamwork gave him roots. Science agrees, stress sharpens us when we're supported, not solo. Meet Priya, a 35-year-old nurse in a hectic ER during a 2022 surge. Chapter 7 hits home. Shifts are brutal, beeping monitors, urgent calls, but she reframes it. Stress isn't her foe, it's her edge. She breathes deep before a procedure, seeing it as a chance to save a life, not a burden. She channels that adrenaline, hands steady, mind clear, and nails a tricky 4. Denis's POWs echo in her head. Control the controllable. She can't stop the chaos, but she can master her response. Chapter 8 steps in. Priya is not alone. Her team is her lifeline. She picks a crew of givers. Nurses who share tips, doctors who listen. They debrief after shifts, not just venting, but bonding. One night, a patient crashes, stress peaks, but their trust shines. Each knows their role, no egos. They save him, and Priya feels it. Winning isn't her solo skill, it's their synergy. 6 months later, she's promoted, not because she cracked, but because she leveraged stress with a team. Now, picture Marcus, a 28-year-old startup founder pitching investors in 2023. Chapter 7 grips him. The stakes are high, sweaty palms, tight chest. But he flips it. This stress is his jet fuel. He visualizes nailing the pitch, not flopping, and uses the pressure to sharpen his focus. He lands the deal, not despite the nerves, but because of them. Denis's eustress in action. Chapter 8 fuels Marcus's rise. He builds a team, coders, marketers, not just for skills, but for spirit. He skips the me-first types, choosing collaborators who brainstorm over lunch, not backstab. When stress hits, a product glitch, they rally, not scatter. Marcus listens, delegates, lifts them up. The fix launches on time, and the startup thrives. Denis would grin. Stress gave Marcus an edge. Teamwork made it stick. Priya and Marcus embody Denis's blend. Stress is a tool. Wield it with purpose. Relationships are a foundation. Build them with care. In our high-pressure, disconnected age, they show winning isn't solo. It's sharpened by tension and softened by trust. As we close this hour, chapters 7 and 8 leave us with a dynamic duo. Stress as your ally, relationships as your anchor. Denis Waitley, from carrier decks to Olympic tracks, proves winning isn't about avoiding pressure or going it alone. It's about using both to soar. Priya and Marcus did it. Turned stress into strength, teams into triumphs. Denis asks, what's stressing you? Who's on your team? Take one stress, reframe it, then call one ally today. Thanks for joining me. Keep edging, keep teaming, keep winning. Chapter 9, A Winner's Legacy, Enrichment for Self and Others. Chapter 9, A Winner's Legacy, Enrichment for Self and Others, is Denis Waitley at his most soulful, a culmination of everything he's built across this book. He starts with a quiet confession. I'm in my late 80s now, and I've made more mistakes than medals. It's raw, human, and sets the tone. This isn't about crowning himself a champion. It's about redefining winning as a gift you give to yourself, to others, to the future. Denis looks back on his life, Navy jets, Olympic tracks, Apollo missions, and asks, what lasts? Not trophies, he says, but impact. He takes us to his San Diego childhood, where his grandmother Mabel planted the seed. Here comes Mr. Potential, she'd say, tending their victory garden. That wasn't just encouragement, it was a legacy of belief, a baton she passed him. Contrast that with his mother's bitterness, have fun while I slave, a lesson in what not to leave behind. Denis learned early, you're remembered for what you plant, not what you take. His Naval Academy days reinforced this, teamwork over ego. His work with Jonas Salk, curing polio, showed him legacy isn't solo, it's shared. Denis ties this to today's world. We're obsessed with instant wins, likes, retweets, headlines, but he urges us to think longer. Legacy, he writes, is the echo of your life in others' lives. Neuroscience nods along. Our brains crave meaning, not just dopamine hits. In the 70s, Denis pushed gold medals. Now he's gentler. Winning is enrichment, a life of purpose that ripples outward. He cites Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor. Life asks us for meaning. We answer with our actions. Legacy is that answer. He gets practical. First, define your why. Not fame, but fulfillment. Denis's was inspiring potential. His books, his talks, his kids. Second, serve others. Mentor. Share, lift. He recalls POWs who survived by teaching each other hope. Third, live authentically, flaws and all. Denis admits his stumbles, divorce, doubts, but they fueled his growth, not his grave. In a tech-drenched age, he warns, don't let screens steal your soul. Legacy needs real connection, eye contact, not emojis. This chapter shifts the lens. Winning isn't a finish line, it's a relay. Denis's own legacy? 2 million copies of his original program. Yes, but more, his grandkids, his readers, us. He closes with a challenge. What will your echo be? It's not preachy, it's personal. A grandfather's plea to plant seeds for a forest you might never see. Example, think of Nelson Mandela, a figure Denis admired. Jail didn't break him. It built a legacy of freedom, passed to a nation. That's the winner's echo. Applying Chapter 9, real-world examples. Let's bring Chapter 9 to life with examples that show legacy in action. Denis's vision, enrich yourself, enrich others, marries his past lessons, perception, responsibility, desire, teamwork. It's the book's heartbeat, pulsing through real people. Meet Elena, a 50-year-old teacher nearing retirement in 2023. Chapter 9 strikes a chord. She spent decades grading papers, but legacy? That's new. Her why crystallizes, not just teaching math, but sparking curiosity. She reframes her stress, Chapter 7, as fuel, her team of colleagues, Chapter 8, as partners. Elena starts a mentorship program, pairing kids with local pros. One student, a shy girl, lands an internship, her eyes lit with possibility. Elena won't see the full forest, but she's planted a seed, her echo in that girl's future. Now, picture Omar, a 32-year-old entrepreneur running a small coffee shop. Chapter 9 shifts his game. Profit's fine, but legacy calls. His why becomes community. Coffee is connection, not just caffeine. He owns his choices, Chapter 5, driven by desire, Chapter 6, to make a dent. Omar hosts open mic nights, hires locals, shares profits with a youth fund. A team barista, once aimless, finds purpose, Omar's echo in his grit. Stress of long hours? An edge, Chapter 7. His staff? A team, Chapter 8. Legacy isn't a plaque, it's lives touched. Elena and Omar embody Denis's relay. They enrich themselves, purpose fuels them, and others, a ripple of impact. In a world chasing now, they plant for later, proving legacy isn't grand, it's intentional. Conclusion, tying the whole book together. As we near the end, let's step back and see the new psychology of winning whole. Denis Waitley began in 1976, a voice in a church, crafting 10 qualities: self-expectancy, motivation, image, direction, control, discipline, esteem, dimension, awareness, projection. In 2021, he returned, not to repeat, but to reimagine. The foreword set the stage, a legacy reborn for a digital age. Chapter 1 flipped winning into perception, your eyes, your world. Chapter 2 revisited those qualities, now softer, richer. Chapter 3 tackled today's chaos, adapt or sink. Chapter 4 rooted us in self-esteem, a diamond within. Chapter 5 demanded responsibility, own it. Chapter 6 lit desire, want it. Chapter 7 turned stress to strength, use it. Chapter 8 built teams, need them. And Chapter 9, it's the capstone, leave it. Denis's thread is clear, winning evolves. Once, it was gold or bust, his Olympians, his pilots. Now, it's growth and giving, his grandkids, his readers. Neuroscience ties it tight. Our plastic brains bend to purpose, not prizes. From his father's wartime whisper, your brain is your universe, to his grandmother's garden, Denis learned, you shape your reality, then share it. His life, jets, POWs, sock, proves it. Winners don't just rise, they raise. Think of Jack Nicklaus, visualizing shots, Wilma Rudolph, outrunning polio, Mandela, freeing a nation. Think of Elena and Omar, everyday echoes. Denis's gift is this: tools for now, seeds for later. The 10 qualities aren't a checklist, they're a compass, pointing to self-mastery, then outward. In a fractured, fast world, he offers balance. Tech's power, human touch, stress's edge, teamwork's warmth. Today's wins, tomorrow's legacy. So what's the takeaway? Denis doesn't demand perfection. He stumbled too. He asks intention. Pick one quality, say, self-direction, set a goal. Lean on one person, your Mabel. Plant one seed, your Echo. The new psychology of winning isn't a trophy on a shelf. It's a mirror and a map. Denis, at 88, hands it to us. Your turn. What will you see? What will you leave? I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please remember to subscribe to receive notification of upcoming recordings. See you in next video.